Hello, Austin, Texas. You're watching the Home Team with Troy and Colton, where we like to bring real estate and money together for your education and a little bit of entertainment. And today we do have a superstar, especially in the area that we're filming, which is a Toll Brothers model home in the Treviso neighborhood outside of Leander. Is Jenny Law. Welcome, Jenny.
Hi.
As far as for today, where we're going to be talking about, everything that's going on, because there's a lot going on in the housing market. That's different. I mean, if we look at what we were thinking in January to what we're thinking now, it's completely different. In the beginning of the year, the industry started to really kind of move. People kind of got comfortable. The rates sometime in late February fell below 6% for the first time in forever. The bonds were under 4%. Things really started to move. We all kind of like, okay, we've kind of moved on to the next section of the housing industry. And then, of course, we went to war. And overnight, rates went from below 6 into the middle sixes, got to the upper sixes, and they've kind of dropped back down into the lower sixes in general. But it's very funny because the rates right now literally respond to tweets. So a good tweet comes out, rates will get a little bit better. A bad tweet comes out, rates will get a little bit worse. But they're hovering in that low to mid sixes. So it is stable in that point. And so as far as for what we're seeing people, it seems like they're just done. That people I've got to buy a home. I can't wait anymore. We've been waiting. And so it does feel like people are starting to move. And it does seem like resales are starting to pick up. But one of the statistics that I heard was that 2025 was a 30-year low in resale homes. And so that when you hear that stat, that's like, oh my gosh, and people get really nervous. But as a buyer, long term, is that really a bad thing? Because if the homes are slowly selling, and the sellers, in my opinion, start to get a little bit more, and I don't want to say desperate, but a little bit more hungry to sell their home, and so are you seeing that with, because you're a master lister. What do you have, like 25 listings right now?
Yeah, about.
Yeah. So are you seeing that from your sellers where they're getting a little bit more eager to where they're thinking about taking offers today that they weren't thinking about taking 30 days ago?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great time for buyers, especially given what happened in 2020, 2021, 2022. And now I think it's a great market for buyers who are finally ready to make that jump into purchasing a home. Sellers are definitely more open to negotiation than before. Um, there are just a lot of inventory on the market, so that's definitely good news for the buyers.
Yeah, and it is funny that they say that, a lot of inventory, but, if you think about it, we're at like 5 months of inventory, but that is a lot of inventory, especially for Central Texas. At one point there was like one home on the market in Cedar Park.
Mhm.
At one point there's only one home for sale. And so it does feel like there's a lot of homes, but in traditional markets, 5 months is kind of that balance. And so but because of the feeling, I have noticed that, like I said, I'm seeing a lot of sellers that will do the traditional title and survey, things like that, but they're also giving up the full 3, or if you're doing FHA, 6%, where they weren't doing that before. And that's what we're using. So we're using that money to help buy that rate down a little bit. And so that we could kind of, help, in ease. Because if you can get a 599 because the seller gave more closing costs as opposed to a 6 and an 8, all of a sudden that mental barrier is gone and it makes it easier for them.
And you're at that. I've got a sub 6 rate now, so it's more appealing.
Yes, it
From
is
the sound of it.
It is more appealing. Mathematically, it doesn't work out unless you live in the home for about, depends, but between 3 and 5 years typically, mathematically. But there is a mental hurdle that a lot of people have to get over, and with the sellers helping that. I have noticed too, and for you saying that, do you think it's more advantageous for a seller to lower the sales price or for them to increase the closing cost to pay the rate down? What do you think works? What do you think is more appealing to a buyer?
I think the most important is having your property stand out when you're trying to sell your home, especially in the neighborhood where there are probably about 60 homes that are on the market, resale homes. How do you differentiate yourself from all the other homes, especially in master plan communities where a lot of homes look very similar? Right? The floor plan, the builder, they're very similar. So how do you differentiate? And sometimes it comes down to the price. Why would somebody choose your home over a different home that has similar finishes, the same floor plan, similar lot? Well, they're going to want the better deal, right? So lowering the price is definitely, I think, more advantageous in getting more eyes on the property versus just offering incentives.
Okay.
I could even see that as, being a buyer, you see something listed at 499, and then you see another home at 510. You're like, well, this one's under 500,000. They're essentially the same thing, right? From the lending side of things, it's kind of, we'd almost rather see seller credits in a way, just because it helps the buyer with the qualifications. If you get $10,000 in seller credits rather than lowering the listing price by 10,000, you're able to get your rate, a point lower than what it was. It can be very advantageous whenever it's, have seller credits rather than lowering the price.
Yeah, and sometimes we will kind of renegotiate that, and during the process, I'm like, hey, the home did appraise for that other amount. So if you go back and swap that sales price for closing costs, then we can get your rate here, and then your monthly payment becomes this. And so we have worked that out as well, and that has helped a lot in the past. As far as for what is the biggest hurdle you think you have to overcome when you're working with the seller? What in general? What are the kind of the things that stop them from being able to sell their home?
I think right now sellers are very shocked at how much their home is worth, especially coming from one of the highest like market appreciations we've seen in a while. Just a few years ago, I think a lot of sellers are still in that mentality where they feel like they can list their home at a fairly high price. A lot of sellers, when I meet them, they'll be like, "Well, my neighbor sold his home 3 years ago for this amount," and they can't fathom how much of a difference it has become in terms of price when listing a home. So that's kind of one of the biggest hurdles right now as a listing agent is to getting the sellers to understand that the value of the home is not the same as it was 3 to 5 years ago.
Yes.
And that is an emotional decision. I mean, it's big time.
Yes, I mean, I have this discussion all the time. Buying a home is very emotional, whereas refinancing is very calculated, and they're completely different. And that as far as, are you seeing that the prices had stabilized in general as far as the sales price? They're no longer, because we did have 2 years of depreciation in the Austin area, the greater Austin area, but it feels to me, and I was wondering what you thought, that the prices have they're bottomed and they're starting to tick back up.
I think so. Last year, for example, that's when it was the most noticeable in terms of the price decreases. You can get a nice new construction custom townhome in Central Austin for well less than $1 million, right? That did not, we haven't seen that in a very long time. I cannot see it going any lower
Yeah, yeah.
than that. So from that standpoint, I do feel like the home prices are starting to stabilize. Of course, we never know what's
Right,
going to happen
yeah.
in the future,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah, it's by the time this thing hits the air, everything could have changed, but that is definitely true. There's a lot of and I think that's probably the biggest thing holding people back is more so the uncertainty than because they talk about the affordability, and that is a real issue, but people are still, unemployment is low, people are still making good money. Inflation, whereas it's higher than we like, it's stable again. It's between 2.5% and 3%. So there is stability in the economy, but I think the uncertainty is what's holding a lot of people back. And I did a deal last week on inflation, right? Because everybody is very concerned about inflation, and trust me, I understand that. But as a homeowner, I'm not really sure inflation is that bad because, we have the cap, the homestead cap. So your home taxes can't go up more than 10% a year as far as the tax value. So if you do have inflation, that naturally drives the prices of homes up. Well, you've already purchased your home. Most people are on a fixed rate, so your principal and interest are very steady. Taxes do go up, but after that second year of a new construction, they go up they creep up. They don't jump up. And so inflation is actually, I think, good for a current homeowner, and so that's one of the things I always try to explain to somebody is that renters compared to homeowners, their net worth is hundreds of thousands of dollars different. Being in Austin, we have a lot of a lot of people that are very intelligent, right? And so there's this belief that, hey, I could just rent and then I'll take that excess money and invest it in the market. So they just came out with a study on that. And so over the last 15 years, if you rented instead of owned a home and you invested the money that you saved into the market, your house value is worth more than your stock account using just those funds. So it's not, I try to tell people that, homeownership is the number one family building wealth tool that you have. And it's just nice to see that I, I wasn't wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a question. So, given the higher rate, I mean, I honestly do not think 6% is high.
Right.
So it's still lower than your past 10-year average, right? But compared to that 3%, obviously, people think that that's very high. Now, for buyers, would you recommend they stick to that 6% 30-year fix, or do you usually recommend taking an ARM loan where?
You know, arm loans are good for the right people. If someone's planning for sure they're going to move or things like that, or know that they're in an area, or this is a starter kind of home for them, things like that. Arm loans are good because it does save them, a few $100s a month. But when it comes to the refinance, there's a lot of uncertainty. And so when I first started in this, arms were really, really big. And then the rates jumped. And then all of these arms started to mature and people couldn't afford the new loans. So that's a personal opinion, so if it's just your average buyer, I try to steer them clear of that. I'm more of a, hey, let's buy the rate down. It's instead of $300 savings, it's $200, but you're not going to have to spend $8,000 in 3 years to refinance your home, and we don't know what the rates are going to be, things like that. Whereas now that the rates are moving down, an ARM is not a bad option. But again, there's a lot of uncertainty. So there is inherent risk in that. And so again, that's something I suggest when it comes to the education of the buyer. The ones that, are a little more meticulous and things like that, I would definitely discuss it with them, show them the savings and things like that. And investors, great, all the time. I suggest that because most of them are only in the house for 3 to 4 or 5 years and then they get out. So it's a great program. It saves them, $6,000-$7,000 a year, and then they're out of the house. And so the appreciation is what they're counting on. But yeah, so as far as for that, boy, that time went fast. So I do appreciate you coming in and kind of sharing a little bit that. How would somebody get a hold of you if they wanted to list their home or buy a home?
A lot of people reach out to me through my website, which is jennylawrealestate.com.
Okay.
And then there's a simple sign-up sheet. Any questions you have, you can just submit it via the form.
So please reach out to her. She's an excellent person. She'll take very good care of you. She does an amazing job, especially out here in the neighborhood. I see her everywhere. So what's coming up next is we're about to show you some of our featured listings. If you do actually purchase one of these listings and you find through this show, we will give you 1% off of your interest rate for the first year at no cost to you. We call it a 1-0 buy down if you're wondering. Thank you for watching the Home Team 512, and we will see you in just a minute. Hello, Austin, Texas, and welcome back to the Home Team 512, where we bring real estate and money together for your education and hopefully a little bit of entertainment. Of course, it's brought to you by Security National Mortgage, where we turn houses into homes by financing your American dream. And we have our superstar resident expert as far as for real estate listings, Jenny Law. Thank you so much for stepping in today. We appreciate that. After watching the first segment, if you're very interested, remember it is jennylawrealestate.com is the best way to reach out to her. And especially if you're looking to list or sell a home in the north central, pretty much the whole central Austin area. So, thank you for all that. I hope everybody learned something on that last segment.
Yeah, thanks for having
Oh,
me.
yes. And so this part of the show is more of my personal thing that as growing up, grew up in the 70s and 80s, and credit cards were kind of introduced and nobody really understood them and things like that. And then we look up in the early 2000s and everybody's stacked with credit card debt and nobody can retire and things like that. And so a lot of people just they don't understand money. They don't they don't understand what it can do for you and how quickly it can spiral out of control for you. And so I like to kind of take this time to help people understand that, And so budgeting, we talk about it all the time. I know we talk about it all the time, but budgeting is the single most important thing for the average person, that because we deal with a lot of people. We take a lot of credit apps, we take a lot of credit reports, we get their income, we see their budgets and stuff like that. And it's just the number of people that don't really know how much money they make, don't really know how much money they have, and have no idea how much they spend per month is, in my mind, staggering. I mean, it's easily, what do you think,
It's the vast majority.
80%?
Yeah,
I mean, it's
absolutely.
80% of the people don't. Now, that 20% that do, they know it to the penny. I mean, it is, there's not a happy middle in this. They either have no clue or they know everything about it.
That's the one you're going over every single document with, every single line item.
Yes.
They
When
don't
we
know
had
it all.
one who was like, "Hey, I paid that credit card down last month." I'm like, "Well, when we pulled your credit report, it hadn't showed up yet. That's why it's different."
Give
So,
us a payoff.
yes,
Yeah.
there in that, there is a happy medium in there, I think. And I had read a book years ago, All Your Worth. It's an easy book to read, and it really, it's a big book, but it's really simple. It's a 50-30-20 concept, and that 50% of your take home should be for bills, right? And 30% should be for discretionary, and 20% should be for savings. And the hardest part about it is because by the time people realize their money's out of control, it's too late. And so this is really good for the people that are just starting, because you don't have a lot of bills, you don't have a lot of this, so it's easier to manage and live to that 50-30-20. And it goes through it. It shows you, you get all of your stuff, you put it all, the first thing you need to do is put it all down in writing. And so and the best thing today, and we were even talking about it, Chat GPT. You can put 4 months of your bank statement and 4 months of your credit card into Chat GPT, and it will give your monthly expenses.
Wow, I did not know that.
Mm.
I mean, I haven't thought about
Yeah,
it.
I suggest that you pay the subscription, because anything you put into Chat GPT on the open deal is open for
Mm.
anybody. So, they have a subscription so that it becomes yours and they don't sell it, right? So they don't put it in their system, it's in your system.
Just white out and black out those account numbers.
Yeah,
should be
I mean,
fine.
you can do all that as
Yeah.
well, but yeah, so there's a disclaimer. I call it the bot. I don't know what everybody else calls it, but some of them call it the agent. But you get your own little bot, you put it in there, and it will give you your expenses, which right down to the T. So I had a family member who had a death in the family, and so the budget was a big deal, and I mean, that's the only way I could get her to do it, was to put it in there, and we got it completely down to that. We saw how much money she was spending, how much she was bringing in, and then we built our budget around it. It is so much simpler now.
Mhm.
For me, I had to write everything down when I started. I had to write on a little pad, and it got to the point at the end of the month I didn't want to spend any money because I didn't want to pull that pad out to write it. And it's a lot easier, so you can put that straight into a Chat GPT or any service that you
system, yeah.
use. I'm sure, but I know Chat does it because that's the one that we used. And it gives you a budget, and then you can even ask it, "Hey, where can I cut on this? Where am I overspending?" And it will do everything for you. And then the hard part comes, the discipline to follow it.
Right.
But learning that. And so in the beginning, with most people, when I put them on that 50-30-20 deal, it's really more like 70 70-20-10, where 70% of their money is going to their bills. And then we start doing things. I'm like, do you really need Hulu, Netflix, Prime? I don't even know some of the other ones, but do you need 5 streaming services?
Yes.
She say yes.
And that's the thing, that. And so in the beginning, cutting cable and going to streaming saved you money. Well, not anymore. Now it's like every streaming service is $11.99, and you get 15 of them, and the next thing you know, you're spending more than cable. So you have to have that discipline. One of the people I follow on the internet called it lifestyle creep. So as you make more money, you stop being stringent to your budget and you start spending more. And then the next thing you know, it just kind of gets out of control. And that's what, it takes, it's discipline.
And it can happen without you realizing it.
Mhm.
You know, it's you go from I'm strict on this to now, hey, I'm making $20,000 a year more. That means I can spend $20,000. That's not it. You still stick to it. You just adjust the numbers based off of that.
Now, given the current economy, would you suggest that that still applies to 20% savings?
I mean, I think it's more important today than ever. But it's harder. Yes, it is harder. But honestly, if you look at the national statistics of savings, if you're just saving 10%, you're saving way more than anyone else. Because the, what is it? The median number for the people over 50 years old is like 300,000. I'm like, and so you're at the twilight of your working and you only have $300,000 to save, and so Social Security's, it's not a lot. No matter how much you put into it, it's not a lot. And I guess it's not taxable now, but as I say, and they tax it. So, but so that it is harder. But yeah, 10% is should be a minimum, I think.
I mean, I personally think that you should save more than 20% now, given the economy. I know that's hard, but
Yes.
I'm with you on that though.
Okay.
Save as much as you possibly
Yes.
can, pay your future
Yeah.
self. It's important.
And compound is super important. I mean, I have sent Colton so many things about the differences starting in your 20s as opposed to your 30s and 40s, and
Significant.
I mean, it's thousands of dollars difference. And so, the younger you are, the more advantage you have in this situation. As you lifestyle creep, get a little bit older and things like that, it becomes a little bit more difficult. You have to be a little bit more disciplined, and you have to really, all of a sudden, is TV more important than retirement? Those are the decisions you make. But it's funny, like you said, there's always that emotional attachment to some of the bills that is hard for me to get some people to get away with. They're like, oh, I can't get rid of this. I'm like, but you're spending $1,000 more than you make a month. You have to
It's not a want, it's a must at this point.
Yeah, and it was funny. Every time someone creates a budget, they tell me that, well, they're going to cut back on their food. I'm like, okay, of all the things on this list, food was the first place you went to,
Yeah.
And we have, become comfortable in our entertainment, and I just don't think people realize it. I mean, there's like 5 streaming services for music, and some people have 2 or 3 of them. And I mean, if you just in your 20s, if you just had one streaming service and just put that into an ETF fund, you would be able to retire in your 60s with no problem.
now I have a question. Being in real estate, I've noticed that a lot of buyers have started purchasing homes in cash because they feel that the interest rates are high and they would rather just pay everything in cash. To me, I still think financing is probably the best way to go just because of the current economy. At least in my opinion, I think it's important to save as much cash as possible. What are your thoughts about that?
So depends
Mhm.
on the person, but right now ETFs are yielding 15 to 30% in return. And the market is expected to. So everybody thinks it's going to double in the next 3 years once this thing in the Middle East is over. That there's a lot of things that will be unlocked. And so, I mean, if I borrowed money for 6-ish% and I left money in an account that's earning 15%, that is a win-win. And so this is later in my life. In the beginning, I probably wouldn't have done this, but later in my life, I will leave that money there, borrow it, and then I will use the gains to pay it off. And so it pays for itself because, if you put $600,000 and it's bringing in 15% and you're paying 6% on 600,000, you just take that money from the top and you pay that down. And at the end, you'll have an appreciated asset and you'll have, $500,000. And you'll have a house paid off and it'll be paid off and it's worth, if you bought it at 600 in 30 years, it's worth 1.2 and you still have 500 of your 600,000. That is my opinion on how you should do it. But again, it's discipline. When you put that money there, you have to leave it there. You can't use it for vacations or stuff like that. You have to use it in the market. So it is a much better idea to right now. Right. And honestly, anytime, because I think is with 2022, the market dropped 20%, right? And everybody was freaking out. And that was, I invested more money then than I think I've invested in my entire life. And now all of a sudden from 2020, the end of 2022 till now, it's gone up like 70%. So it's always a better idea to hedge those two, in my opinion.
Yeah, and as a mortgage lender, you saying the financing is the way you would go. We love to hear that.
Yes, yes. And I am not saying that because I'm in that. I'm saying that this is strictly about money. And it is, but again, it's for the right people. Not everybody can do that, right? Because everybody will put that money over there, they'll finance the house, and then they'll spend that money on a boat, or something like that. And so that's the hard part. Like I said, the discipline, if it is one of those things that's easy, super easy, but not everybody can do it. And it's because I think it's so easy just to do something else. But you have to think, we get hammered with ads. I mean, I can't go on Facebook anymore. I can't even see my friends anymore. It's so full of ads, And so it's very hard, and it's very hard to stay disciplined, especially as sophisticated as the marketing has become in this environment. I mean, it's amazing because my algorithms know exactly what I like to buy. I mean, exactly. And just one day when I'm bored, I'm like, hey, let me look, next
His
time.
algorithm takes over my algorithm because he sends everything to me when his birthday's coming around. It's a whole ordeal.
Yeah,
Just ideas.
Just ideas. Those are just cool. Those are just cool toys. But yeah. But no. So I do want to thank you again for showing up. I hope that you've learned a little bit of something. I hope that everybody's learned something. And remember, if you are looking to buy, sell, or even lease a home, JennyLawRealEstate.com. And she will take very good care of you. I have been watching her just amazing results, and especially in this neighborhood where I live. So I'm very thankful and very appreciative for you coming on our show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So what's about to happen over the next 30 seconds or 90 seconds, I don't even know how long you're going to see a list of listings. There is a QR code on that listing. If you do end up purchasing one of those homes and you kind of go through that QR code to get to the agent and you use us for financing, we will give you 1% off of the interest rate for the first year. And that's at no cost to you. And remember, this segment was brought to you by Security National Mortgage, where we turn houses into homes by financing your American dream. And we'll see you next week.